Is this A, understeer phase, B, oversteer phase, or C, all sorts of steer phase? Let me know in the comments. Strange times. Judging by the four tailpipes, this might be the M-est X3 we are getting this generation. And it's also not just the exhaust pipes either. There are also the signature abusable door mirrors. The obvious consequence? It's not an S58 working under the bonnet, it's a mild hybrid B58. That's 381 horsepower plus another 18 from the electric motor for a combined 398 horsepower. Torque side, it's 540 Nm from the straight 6 plus another 200 Nm from the electric motor for a combined 580 Nm of torque. That's 112 horsepower and 70 Nm less than the previous generation X3 M competition. At least weight did not go up. In fact, the M50 is 25 kilograms less than the X3 M competition, at least according to the EU norm. Oh, guess which gearbox manages power going to all four wheels? Wrong, it's ZF's 8-speed automatic. I know, who could have seen that coming? Jokes aside though, it's no surprise, and honestly, there's no reason to put anything else in a car like this. Alright, let's talk looks. And let's start with the color. Dune Grey Metallic, or as you and I know it, beige. But don't get me wrong, I actually quite like it. Then we've got yet another take on BMW's signature headlight design, which is quite aggressive and works well with the inescapable illuminated kidney grille. Here we have a steep incline towards the Hofmeister kink, which then leads to a very small rear window. I am getting E87 1 Series vibes here. The taillights follow the new T-shape design language, and the roof culminates in a double bubble roof spoiler. Overall, we have quite a few interesting details here. But put all of them together and I'm not exactly sure what to make of it. There are a lot of flat, undisturbed surfaces. The wheels, even though 20 inches in size, look rather small, and aren't the taillights a bit big? Inside we have got a much more futuristic interior than the previous generation, borrowing heavily from the new 5 Series, especially those thick light bars that change color depending on driving mode. But also these new vent controls, which are gloriously complicated, especially the ones on the doors. If you've always wanted to control vent openings in 20% increments using a touch-sensitive slider, then BMW's got you covered. Then there's the fabric-covered dashboard and part of the door cards. I quite like it despite its plasticky feel. I have to wonder though, if the colors fade, can you bring them back to life with a blowtorch? The shiny center console with the capacitive buttons is still here. I still hate operating it, even though it works quite okay. At least they have decided to keep the iDrive knob. Now, this being an M-ish car, and even though it's the M-est X3, there is no drive mode configuration such as the ones in the M models. The seats are probably the least novel item in this ensemble. They are adequately bolstered and comfortable, and I really like the knee support, which is quite useful when you're slightly taller. I can also sit behind myself. The X3 has grown over the years. We all have. Yesterday was a cold and rainy day, so I got a good look at the Goodyears. They seemed pretty composed, but there wasn't a lot of grip. So, UltraGrip 3 might be a bit of a euphemism. But there's an upside to that, because that allowed me to explore grip levels at legal speeds. So, I drove a few mountain passes, and the understeer was strong, but fun, because the chassis is, once more, superb. There's no need to drag this one out. The front wheels might just as well be following train tracks, there is little roll. It was hilariously fun. I admit, I might have been caught off guard because I certainly did not expect an X3 to be handling like that. And best of all, it didn't shake my bones to pieces. A few years ago I was invited to an M-Town event on a skid pad. And I got the chance to drive an X3 M and an X4 M, and I found them to be super capable, but also super harsh. And BMW has made the new X3 noticeably more comfortable while sacrificing only minimal sportiness. I think it works. On the other hand, with such a capable dynamic setup, I found the drivetrain options a bit lacking. A rear-wheel drive mode would have been nice, but it seems that's still reserved for full-fat M models. In raw numbers, the steering is slightly slower than on the M2, M3, M4, but in the real world it feels anything but slow. Put all of this together and you are not getting great handling for a crossover. You are getting great handling full stop. It's not all Vanos and Valvetronic though, because feedback from the steering is rather subdued. And yes, summer tires might change that slightly, but don't expect that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation. That's where the B58 comes in, and it's still nuclear. The end. However, there is an electric motor, and what it does is smooth out whatever turbo lag there might have been. I'm not saying it feels like a naturally aspirated engine, I am never going to say that. But the torque curve feels rather linear. Oh, and there is plenty of torque. Obviously, I would have loved a full-fat M car, if only for the prestige. But realistically, the M50 is plenty fast. Drag racers might notice the 110 horsepower and 70 Newton meters, but on a mountain pass, it's potato. Oh, and if anybody at BMW is listening, this is not an excuse not to make an M version. I'm usually not one for fuel economy talk, but this is remarkable and worth mentioning. So I have done 336 kilometers, many of them pooning around mountain passes, and the gauge shows 10.4 liters per 100 kilometers. That is astonishing. So maybe the 8-liter combined figure is actually possible. I am not exactly the target audience, and the X models don't mean all that much to me. Yes, obviously I'm sad about losing a proper M model, but if one had to go, then the X3 was probably not the worst choice. That said, the chassis wizards have done another outstanding job tuning this machine, and it doesn't feel that far off a real M model. That's not an excuse not to work on the X3 M though.